Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Talking Point here on the Rangers Review with me, Chris Jack, and as always, I'm joined by Stevie Clifford. Stevie, how are we today?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. Just laughing because it's another episode, and one day we'll get something good to discuss. And
I
that
think
positivity and excitement.
that was the idea when we had this concept of our own show in the summer. There were lots of good things to talk about. I don't think we've done one great, wholly upbeat one yet, just because there's so many, as we know, there's so many things to get stuck into, so many points to discuss. On the show today, we're going to look at the goals that Rangers have scored, or more precisely, unfortunately, the lack of them, and the options that Philippe Clement has at number 9. And we'll get into going through each of those options individually. But I think we have to start with the big problem. Stevie, Rangers have scored 16 goals in 11 league matches. 6 of them came in the one game against Ross County. For comparison, Aberdeen have 24, Celtic have 31, and Rangers have just one more than Motherwell, who have also played 11 games. How big a problem, how big a concern is this right now?
It's massive. It's absolutely massive because, well, I think the performances showed, Chris. I think we've used the word bland, boring, turgid, and I don't think any of these are unfair. And that, unfortunately, is where the manager is. Had a wee bit of a conversation with the manager regarding his style, and I think it's what a lot of the fans are saying, unfortunately, rightly or wrongly. And it becomes, difficult. I don't want to sit here and slate them, but there's not a lot to get excited about. You look at the performance on Sunday and even the performance of the week before against Motherwell. It's very workmanlike. It's very difficult to see. It's not like we suffocate teams. It's not like we pressure them. It's not like we wear them down. It's not like that. We give up possession. We give up territory, and we're quite happy to try and play on transitions and play on breaks and stuff. And it's not always great to watch. And I think that's a big problem. And we're not creating enough. At times, there's too many long balls. There's too many needless passes. And then when we do. And I think weirdly, since I've kind of brought that to his attention, I think that's kind of stopped in the extent of the long balls. But we're not really going anywhere. We're not really. It seems to me like we're too deep. It seems to me like we're easy to play against. And these are things that we've spoken to Chris in press conferences about, not just in the last couple of weeks, but for months we've been highlighting his style being an issue. And all of a sudden, I kind of think it's caught up with us. And I don't think individual players have helped, but I certainly don't think that this style is prevalent to how he might in his head want to play, because it relies on pace and power, and we don't have it. But yet he still tries to play it. And we sit really deep. We're very deep defensively and midfield-wise. And then the second half of the team are very high up. And the disconnect. So teams play in that little area all the time. Hibs done it, Hearts done it, St Mirren did it in recent times. And we didn't give up much opportunities, but we didn't feel comfortable. And we don't get up the pitch. We don't create enough. And he sat and argued back to me and said that, the bottom line is we don't create enough. And that's why we're not scoring any goals, Chris. It's not like we're missing an abundance of opportunities. We're just not creating very much. And if you look at, I think on Sunday, to give you a wee snippet, between the 6th minute and the 89th minute, our XG was 0.7. So it's just, it's... And whilst Hearts didn't overly do much, they had the chance, obviously, but they went through and hit the post. We're kind of... How do I explain this without sounding... We're kind of on par with every team that we play. Like, we'll trade chances. There's not many of them, but we'll trade them, and then most often it's a bit of a quality from our point of view. If you look at the wins we've had, individual moments have kind of decided a lot of them. And it's not like we're dominating teams. I don't think that ever happens. And that's why we're not scoring goals. It's, it's very difficult to sit and say, well, look, the chances are there, the play is there, the performances are there, because they aren't. And that's the biggest thing that I'm worried about. And I just don't know what to do in terms of how do you fix that. I don't think there's an obvious answer straight away.
I think that touches on a point that myself, Josh, and Derek touched on the morning briefing on Monday this week. Is it a style problem or is it a personnel problem? And for me, it's more a style problem. Now there are faults with each of these players. None of them are world beaters. All of them are more than good enough to be picking up results consistently in the Premiership against the level of opposition that they come up against. For me, the bigger issue is, as you've outlined there, how the manager is setting the side out. And as you say, Rangers don't pummel teams. It's not wave after wave of attack and every game the goalkeeper's making a handful of great saves and it's been cleared off the line and you're forcing teams to really defend for their lives. All the teams that Rangers play, and most of the teams that Rangers play against, they're relatively comfortable in games. And at 1-0 going into the last 10 minutes, or a goal behind going into the last 10 minutes, they're quite happy, because how many times have we seen over the seasons you give teams a throw or a corner or a chance to lump it into the box? Rangers have come a cropper from that far too often in recent seasons. They haven't done it a lot this season, thankfully, but it's not through a great mentality or anything great tactically. They've been quite fortunate that these narrow ones, they've managed to edge them, because they've never been outside that Ross County game that I touched on earlier on. They've never looked that comfortable in games, and never looked like going and killing teams off. I think a lot of that comes down to the structure of the side. Obviously, people will then comment on the individuals. If we're going to comment on individuals, it seems the best place to start is the man that leads the line more often than not. Cyril Dessers, he scored his 10th goal of the season at the weekend. So often he's spoken about as the cause of Rangers' problems. I think you touched on it there in terms of the setup of the side. Like he's far too isolated. I don't think the style of play that Clement has suits him. But to me, he's also been the solution to a lot of these problems, because if you take the last 3 games as a barometer, where would Rangers have been without Dessers being in the right place at the right time to put the ball away? Misses his chances against Motherwell, gets the goal, Rangers go on and win the game. Misses his chances against Olympiacos, scores a really good goal, Rangers get a really good point. On Sunday, as you outlined there, Rangers don't really create a lot. Dessers gets the goal, and it proves to be enough. And for me, I do understand the criticism that he gets. I do understand there are concerns about other aspects of his game, but in terms of black and white, in terms of numbers, Rangers actually have to be quite thankful for him, because if he was not there, where else right now are these goals coming from? That was that suggests you perhaps don't quite agree.
Well, no, I'm going to. I mean, I'll find it back on you, but you asked about style and things like that, and how he's trying to play, and I genuinely think, as I said to you, seen it a lot on Sunday. I spoke to Joshua about it a wee bit, and our back line's very deep, and there's no longer James Tavernier no longer bombs up and down the way he did, but Jeffy maybe tries to do it on the left-hand side, but both are playing inverted and cutting in quite a lot. You've not got that natural width anymore, and I think that kind of stifles us a wee bit. But Raskin is sitting very, very deep. He's almost like an anchor man, and your other 2 midfielders are quite high, so there's a disconnect. And when we do go, there's a lot of times we have it, and we try and go long, or we're looking for that out ball, and he's never there. He never takes it into play. He's never in the positions to hold it up. So there's no link-up play. He doesn't dominate defenders. He doesn't occupy. He doesn't even make it difficult for them. And if you look at games at Kilmarnock and Aberdeen, if he's not scoring, he's completely ineffective. Like, and I mean that in the nicest way possible, as ridiculous as it sounds, because he's not really holding the ball up. He's not bringing players in. He's not got a good link up. You look at his through ball to Motherwell in the cup game and things like that. He's not capable. He doesn't have the ability to be an all-rounder, which is why we've seen flashes of Igamane at Tannadice and we were like, God, start this boy. Because he simply held it up and played a pass. Danilo came on against Motherwell and we were like, oh, thank God he's back. Please get him in the team as soon as possible. But as you rightly pointed out, you know, and I'll say this again, and somebody said to me, Cyril Dessers was the reason why we drew in Greece, and he's also the reason why we didn't get 3 points. And that's him in an absolute nutshell. And I think it's really easy to blame everything on him. But you talk about individuals and structure and things like that, and I tend to agree. I think that, you know, it's almost like, as weird as this is going to sound, we played a 4-1-4-1 on Sunday, and I've seen it a lot, but it was almost like it went 4-1, massive gap, 4-1, and the disconnect in the team was massive. So there wasn't much kind of connection there to get the ball up the field, structure that didn't really look where, and that's why Hearts were able to get lots of the ball, and it felt like we were under pressure, but they were never really creating anything because the 4 and the 1 are pretty solid. But it's that gap in there where they're playing a lot in and we're not getting a lot of the ball, and we're kind of struggling a wee bit with it, Chris. And I'm going to fire it back to you, the Dessers thing, a wee bit, because I don't think he's good enough to play how we ask him to play. And that's the nicest way to put it. I'm not saying he's not good enough. Would he be better with a partner? Would he be better with out-and-out wingers? I think possibly. But then the argument to that is, the other side of it, of why I don't think he's good enough to play this role, is because you look at the games at Kilmarnock and you look at the games at Pittodrie and things like that where we've had real issues. He's never really in the box. He's never really where you need him to be. He's never making those runs that Igamane and Danilo and their short spells have made, like that run Danilo made at Motherwell in the Cup, where he starts it and doesn't finish it, but he creates it. And we're all sitting going, get him in the team straight away. It's because we don't see it. And that's where I'm struggling with Cyril Dessers in terms of, I'm mightily grateful that he's picked in this last week. But I don't know, Chris. I mean, as much as I find it difficult to not blame him, and I think that's a real issue. I would take him out of the team. But it's not, I don't think it's cut as dry as that. Mm-hmm. I think that's, you take him out of the team, he's reliable, he's got the right mentality, he keeps coming back. I think all that's important. So I'm going to put it back to you. It's so difficult. I don't think he's the issue, but I would take him out of the team. Mm-hmm. How does that make sense? I'm almost contradicting myself when I'm talking about it. So, but do you understand why? Because I don't feel he holds it up. I don't feel he links it up. I don't feel he's in the right position ever for an out ball. I don't feel he occupies. I feel that he's more concerned about getting fouled than he is about trying to bully defenders and occupy them. He's a frustrating guy. But yet, without him this week, probably wouldn't be in a final, wouldn't have got a result against Europe, and wouldn't have beaten Hearts. So how can I fairly say he needs to come out of the team, but at the same time, it's not all his fault, but a lot of it is? That's where you are with him. It's such, he's almost a conundrum, Chris. So I need to ask you, where do you stand in it all?
You mentioned two C words there, conundrum and contradiction, and I think that sums him up perfectly. You look at black and white, more than 20 goals last season, you can say your Rangers number 9 has done his job. You look at a number of matches, you touched on his robustness and his game time there. Rangers would have been in a far poorer place, and the last season didn't end well. It would have been a whole lot more difficult given the other injuries within the squad if Dessers wasn't available. I think you do have to praise the fact that he is there and he's available. you do have to, I think, acknowledge his mentality of being able to come back time after time. There are very few players that survive being booed off or sarcastically cheered off, as he was on more than one occasion last season. That could have broken lesser players. I think you have to give him credit for that. But as you say, there are, for every good point, there's one that you can put in a list over here, and he's a really, really difficult guy to actually weigh up. If he had moved on in the summer, I don't think many people would have been that disappointed. If he was to move on next summer, I don't think many people would be disappointed. But it then comes down to what's the alternative. And right now, for me, the alternative, or the obvious one, is, as you touched on there, is Danilo had his problems. I know last season that injury up at St Johnstone really curtailed him for a couple of weeks after he came back. A few weeks after that, picks up that terrible knee injury. Season over, doesn't really get a chance to get into it. This season, it's been a bit stop-start. Where do you stand on Danny? Do you still believe that there is a Rangers number 9 in there? Because for me, it's too early to write him off. It's too early to say he's a £6 million flop. I don't buy into that. I think we spoke about that after the news of him going back to Holland for his tidy up and for doing a bit of rehab work. For me, it's too early to say you write off him and you say he's no use. I like him. I think there's definitely something there. You touched on the Motherwell game, just offering something different. I think what he still has to prove is, can he get to the level of goals that Dessers has got? If he played the same number of games, would he outscore Cyril Dessers? For me, I think he probably would do. I think he does have that capability. Where do you stand on a guy who I think it's fair to say still splits a bit of opinion amongst the fans?
Yeah, I think that's all fair. He definitely splits opinion, and I think the reason why he splits opinion is because I think a lot of the current feeling is negativity around the club, isn't there? There's so much of that going on that people don't want to say this guy might be good, this guy might be the answer to what we've got. The truth is, the blunt truth is that his 30 minutes against Motherwell in the Cup, he showed more forward play than anyone has up front for Rangers this season in terms of all-round movement, link-up play, positioning, which is really important. And it's not just, and this is what I was talking about, you go back to watch that winning goal that Czerny set by Rami up for, the out ball, winning it down in the right-hand side, making that first initial wee link-up pass, the run afterwards. We don't get that. You get the polar opposite, where players can't get into the box because they're too far behind. So what Danny needs to do is, one, force his way into that team. I don't know how he does it, because I think there's a stubbornness regarding the manager where not only his formation, which he's talked about, he won't change that, his style, he won't change that, but there's individuals that he won't change no matter what. And I think we're stubbornly on at him, and he's starting to change James Tavernier. And stubbornly, I think he's dug himself in with Hadji. He won't kind of change his opinion on Hadji. He won't change his opinion on Cyril Dessers. He probably won't change his opinion on Danny either. But the problem that we have, Chris, is we can't carry a £4 and a £6 million striker who are not influencing our team. Come January, there's going to have to be decisions made. And, you know, if Cyril Dessers can't play his style, which he can't, but he's still popping up with goals, because I would expect anyone up front for Rangers historically to pop up with goals, no matter what level. You've got to ask a question regarding him and his position at Rangers. If Danilo is not fit and not able to take his opportunity and is just not fancied by the manager either, then that becomes really problematic in January, because we're going to need to fix that, because the forward line is so much of how he plays. And that's where you've got a big question mark. Danilo himself has probably got 6 weeks to influence. And when we come back after this break, we have Dundee United, St Johnstone away, Kilmarnock at home, Ross County away. There are 4 Premier League games where Danilo should be looking to play 30 and 45 minutes in each. Mm-hmm. And the manager should be looking for him to play 30 and 45 minutes in each. And remember, we'll have Nice away, so you expect Cyril to play 90 minutes in that. We've got Tottenham at home, you expect Dessers to play in that one. And then you've got the cup final. But before that, you've got 4 opportunities for Danilo to play. And I think we'll find out a lot from where the manager sees him. He's also got 2 more weeks now to get fitness done, and get up to speed. There'll probably be a bounce game in there somewhere. Hopefully not against Dundee after last time and him making it a World Cup final. So, I don't know. I mean, I really like Danilo. I think there's more to him. I think there's more to his game than Cyril Dessers. I think he's a better all-round player. I think he's got pace. I think he's got a wee bit of power compared with Cyril. I think he can occupy. Is he as good a finisher, or will we see like for like? The evidence suggests probably, because before he got injured the first time, he did miss quite a few opportunities, didn't he? But he was in the position to do that. So is he an abundantly better finisher? We're not sure. But would you swap that for a better all-round game for the purpose of the style that how Clement wants to play? I think I probably would. And I think he needs to start contributing. That's what I'm saying. These 4 games coming up, Chris, and I'll fire this back to you as well. These 4 games really coming up, Danilo needs to play. He needs to force minutes. He needs to get numbers. And he needs to affect the game. The same as he did at Motherwell in that cup game. He needs to come in with these 4 games and really affect it so that he can confidently say, coming up to this cup final, I've got to be involved in this.
Mm-hmm. I think we touched on Dessers there. I spoke a bit about his mentality and being able to come back from misses. If you're talking about mentality of a player, I think you need to give Danny huge credit for the way that he came back from that injury. Coming into new club, new country, but it was a big move for him, a big move for him and his family. To then find yourself going through that rehab. We know how difficult it is to come back from knee injuries. We know the work they had to go through in terms of his gym work, and then finally making those small steps. And when I interviewed him out in Holland in pre-season, he was going through the kind of mental side of it and having a mental coach, both from that injury and the facial injury that he sustained up at Perth. And how you come back from that, I think how you almost feel wanted within a squad, and how you set your sights. I'm definitely going to get back. He's achieved quite a lot in that regard, and people might say that sounds a bit silly because he's not won anything, he's not scored enough goals, he's not played enough games. I think he's achieved something to get back to where he is, but as you've outlined there, he has to now take that next step forward. He has to go and prove in these next few weeks that he's not just a backup to Dessers. He's not just a guy who can get 20, 30 minutes when Dessers gets a bit tired. Can he be the guy who actually takes Cyril's spot in this side? I mentioned earlier on about a number of fans. I think having this, do we write him off, do we back him? I think the fans would want to back him. I think most would want to go with him on that journey. If they saw something in him, they believed he could be the answer, I think he would get people on side quite quickly. I think as you've touched on there, that's the challenge for him now. This is the next big challenge in his Rangers career. If it doesn't work out in this run of fixtures between Dundee United and the Old Firm game at the start of January, going into the transfer window, Rangers, they'll still be short of goals. They still won't have the answers to these problems that we're speaking about at that stage. Who moves on? As you say, Rangers can't carry £10 million worth of striker on significant wages and not get the best out of both of them. I think that brings us on to the third man in this particular conversation in terms of Hamza Igamane. When he was signed in the summer, nobody knew anything about him. It was very hard to even Josh and Adam doing our scout reports for us, even footage and trying to get anything on him. It was hard. Just nobody knew a lot about him at all. Complete unknown. I think what we've seen of him so far, there's flashes there. There's things that we like. He also scored in the European game, which was huge for him. Given starts against, I think it was Hibs at Ibrox in the St Mirren game, for me, didn't do enough to then say, I'm ready to start a run of games, it's no surprise that Dessers has come back in and scored the goals after that. When you look at the situation with Dessers, we all knew what he was and what he's going to be. We knew the situation with Danny over the course of the summer. Was it a surprise to you that the manager didn't go for a more established third choice, spending the money on Igamane as a project player, if you like, someone who may contribute, who may go on to be a great Rangers number 9? Was it too big a gamble, and ultimately has that gamble backfired because Rangers just don't have another option right now?
Interesting, because we need to be careful, because if we say yes, it was the wrong decision, we're more or less writing this young lad off. And listen, scored a good goal against Bucharest, didn't he? Come on, looked lively at points. I think he's quite rough around the edges. He probably could have got sent off in Greece. If we're really honest, he got silly booked and then he went up with his elbow. And if you've seen what Jeffy got sent off against Kiev for, my heart was in my mouth a wee bit, and I'm glad the referee showed a wee bit of sense. I'm not saying he should have. I'm just saying European football, anything can happen. So I think he's still quite rough. There's the argument, and we've heard plenty of times, I think Coppin in his piece with Joshua actually answered this, Chris. He said that if we hadn't moved for him, we would never have got him. So I understand that, but we can't really afford to carry a project for a year until he gets up to speed. If in that year he turns into the next reincarnation of Ronaldo, then yeah, we've done the right thing. And I'm talking about old school Ronaldo, not the Portuguese one, because he's quite he's more of a dynamic kind of forward man than Cristiano is, that kind of winger, which was why I made that point. But at the moment, I'm not sure that he's capable. When he came on against Dundee United, I thought, oh my goodness, please just play him. And that's more out of desperation of things that we're not seeing from our current front man than we are probably getting too excited about a brief cameo. So it's a matter of trying to get him minutes. Again, he falls into the same category as Danilo, where these 4 league games coming up for him, he'll probably get European game time. Would have went for somebody more established. There's not too often you get Jermaine Defoe sitting there, is it? So it's a difficult one. It's a really difficult one, because I'm very conscious of not writing the young lad off. I do think there's something there based on very limited, or based on the fact that I want to believe there's something there, Chris. And if there's not, have we wasted more money? It's a difficult one. What do you make of him? Do you notice how I just passed that to you there?
I like him. I think there's definitely something there. He's definitely raw. You have to say there's rough edges there all around his game. As you touched on there, you don't find a Jermaine Defoe just sitting waiting for the phone to ring to come in and play a backup or to come in and play a supporting role. So I do understand why they went for him. My fear is if Rangers do see the best of him, it will not be Philippe Clement that sees the best of him. Clement may have uncovered someone and may have made a really smart bit of business for Rangers, both in a football sense and a financial sense, but he then doesn't become the manager that gets the best out of him, because I think we all know the situation that you've outlined there, some of the situations that individuals are facing. No bigger situation than the one that the manager's facing. So I hope Igamane turns out to be the player that Rangers think he could be. Because if it is, and they have uncovered someone, if they have plucked someone from obscurity, the last time they did that, it worked out fairly well. A young guy coming in from Finland that nobody had ever heard of. So hopefully that's the same path that Rangers are going down, and they have found someone that can be this unknown quantity that comes in and that the fans take to, and that can deliver, and that can repay that faith. But I do fear that it may not be Clement that gets the best out of Igamane, because as we've touched on over the last hour, there's issues within the squad. There's goal issues, there's creativity issues within the squad. And just to round off, I think you look at some of the other guys who you potentially look at as sources of goals. James Tavernier being one who has been able to rely on over seasons. The numbers are just not there. Tav is just not there this season. Cherney is on 6 after a recent purple patch. Tom Lawrence got into 5 before he picked up his injury. Apart from that, where else can goals come from in this side? For me, I think Bayrami has to contribute more. I think he should have more in him. I'd like to see some more goals coming from midfield. I think Diomande has that in him. Don't see it often enough. Connor Barron, don't really see that attacking threat at all. Centre halves. When was the last time Rangers scored the goal direct from a corner with someone up and winning a header? So I think there's other areas of the squad where you can say they should contribute more. Ultimately, Rangers need more from their number 9. Whether that's Igamane, whether that's Danilo, whether it's Cyril Dessers, Rangers need more from that number 9 figure. They need more from the attacking 3. They need more from Clement to allow that attacking 3 to go and score more goals. But if you're picking other individuals, where can Rangers pick up guys that can go and chip in with 5, 6 over the course of a campaign? Because all these ones, they can add up, and if they're scored at the right times, they can be important goals.
Yeah, I think you summed it up. I think the big thing for me is set pieces. I don't think we've scored one so far this season, and that's been a big concern. So you're not even giving the centre halves opportunities from our deliveries, which we need to fix. And then, as you said, but if you look at Steven Gerrard's winning Rangers team, most time in midfield it was Kamara and Jack. Kamara and Jack obviously were tremendous players, and Stephen Davis was in there kind of rotating, didn't play every game, likewise Jack didn't, but these weren't massive goal threats. Raskin and Barron don't necessarily need to be massive goal threats. So we need, in particular, as well as your front man, you need that front 3 to be pitching in. Now, Cherney has been recently, question marks over the robustness of him perhaps, and Bayrami just looks, I watched him closely on Sunday, and there was times where he would pass 1 or 2 players and look up, and Diomande and Dessers were nowhere to be seen. So I think it's crucial that the guy that's playing behind the front man is in the box and is contributing. Now, Tom Lawrence kind of appeared sometimes and not other times, and maybe arguably too slow, etc. You need to fix that 10 position. Does that happen when Bayrami naturally comes in? Possibly it does. It was no coincidence that Ross County outlier, we had Matondo on the left with Jeffy in that pace, and number 10 position, Lawrence did have a better game. I think he pitched in with a goal as well that day, and it's no coincidence that a lot of it hinges on that kind of play. Cherney isn't slow, but he's not rapidly fast. So there needs to be, I think it's fine margins between selection and setup. I think getting that right and possibly making a few changes could unlock things. But you're right about goals from elsewhere. I think it shows you how vital James Tavernier has been. But I think naturally James Tavernier's just kind of got to the point now where he's not able to contribute what he once was. So it's a difficult one. All things come to an end, but we need to. It was always going to be a point where we needed to solve the conundrum that James Tavernier wasn't getting those numbers anymore. And we talk a lot about not getting penalties and things like that. We're not getting these penalties because we're not effective around the box anymore. We're not pressurising teams. We're not crushing. We're not dominating games. And the reason why is because we're not pressurising as much as before. So is it a case of hoping Matondo, Cortez, Danilo come in and make a big difference? I think yes, but I also think he needs to change that stubbornness that I talked about before in terms of his selection and not his favourites, but he's got a set process I think he's sticking to. And I think he needs to mix it up slightly in order for us to get goals from elsewhere, Chris. But, we've spoke now, I think, the best part of 35 minutes, and there's not really answers. Maybe in January, we're going to have to make some big decisions surrounding the squad, particularly the front men. May not be overly popular, may be popular, I don't know. and make some other big decisions around this team, because I know we don't have a lot of money, but there's still too many players in this squad who are never available, don't affect our games. We're paying too much for them just to be playing 10 minutes on right wing, etc. We need to be smarter and more economic around who we have in this team. And there might be some wheeling and dealing to do in January, because if we go into the second half of the season 9 points behind in the position we are, etc., etc., it's going to be a struggle to watch. And these games that are 1-0s and 2-1s at the moment and are extremely close, they might just start becoming draws. And that's a really worrying thing. So, big questions, I think, about how we go around our January business. For the next 6 weeks or so, I think maybe we've outlined on this show that it's up to Danilo, Igamane, it's up to your 10s, etc., to jump in and start. And maybe the manager has to look at it and say, this isn't working. What other personnel can I get in there to at least give a chance to try and affect in front of goal? So, more questions than answers, but it's certainly been an interesting discussion.
That nod to the January transfer window sounds like a cliffhanger and a plug ahead of a future Talking Point show. So on that note, we shall leave it there. Stevie, thanks for your time as always, much appreciated. I'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah, as always. It'd be nice to come on in a couple of weeks and talk about some positive results, and we talk about cup finals and things like that. But sadly, it's more of a dilemma show than it has been a positive one. So hopefully people have found it interesting. I'd love to hear what people think as well about the striking options and about shape and about individuals as well. So get the comments in so that we can read it. And what do they want? What do you want us to talk about next? I think that's another interesting one. We're back in it every couple of weeks. So what would you like to hear us talk about next?
Thanks as always to everyone for tuning in, and don't forget the best way to support the work that we do here at the Rangers Review is to like the YouTube channel and subscribe to the website to read the best Rangers journalism. So once again, thanks for your company, and we will see you soon.